Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Michelle Moore, who's founder and retirement specialist with Moore Family Wealth, and we'll be talking about protecting what matters: love, legacy, and lasting security. Michelle, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I always enjoy talking with you. Your perspectives are fresh and empathetic, and I love your approaches. So now we're dialing into, creating that legacy, that lasting legacy and security. So where do you start when you're working with the client in talking about this? Because you often say life insurance is love assurance, and I love that quote.
Yeah. And so most of us go through life and we have people, oftentimes our children or our spouses, who are very dear to us. And we don't necessarily want to think about what happens if we're not here. But the most responsible, loving, kind thing we can do is to take care of those things while we still are able. So my history, as you may know, was as an occupational therapist. I worked for a couple decades, primarily with seniors. And so not only did I see time after time again in skilled nursing facilities, but when I worked with hospice and the passing of my own husband and several dear friends in their 40s, that it can be a total mess if you don't have your wishes in writing, if you don't have things set up through a trust. And a will alone is usually not sufficient enough in most cases, and how complicated that can get for those who are left behind. And so in order to really protect what matters most, to have that love assurance, the final thing you can do for your loved ones is to have a good plan in place.
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes doing that plan ahead of time to make sure that everything is in place is a gift. You know, it really
Absolutely.
is, because I'm sure that we've heard horror stories of people whose, spouse passes away or parents pass away, and they're left with confusion and a mess. And all of a sudden, when the dust settles, it's like, wow, the estate was, moderate, but now it's even less because of all these things and fees and taxes we have to pay. And I didn't know I have to pay taxes on this and that and the other. So talk a little bit about how that, factors in as far as what you help your clients plan for, because that factors in that love aspect, right? If you're the retired or pre-retired, parent, that is love, that you are putting these things in place so that your family is not impacted negatively.
Absolutely. And I think there's two things there that I wanted to touch on. One is, usually folks think about needing advance directives when they're older. And advance directives, for those who aren't in the medical field, it's what do you want done if you're not able to speak for yourself, right? So it can be your healthcare power of attorney. It can be a financial power of attorney. It's those final wishes. And certainly that's something that's near and dear to my heart with my history, is making sure that that's in writing. I've seen so many families who are just devastated with, what would mom want? Would she want life support or not? And not being able to make that decision, and how it destroys families.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it more times than I would like to count. And so even younger families having that knowledge and that plan in place is super important. And then the other piece that your question asked was the estate. So if someone passes away, and it's very likely that that estate in lawyer fees, court fees, is going to be reduced by about 30% is the average. So you're only going to get maybe 30% of that estate if you don't have it set up properly with, usually, like I said, usually a trust is best. Even if you don't have a lot of assets, you think, oh, maybe I don't need it. A will alone just says who should have things. It doesn't give them access to those things. It has to be put on public record, go through the court system. It's incredibly time consuming, emotionally consuming, and takes a very long time.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, that really, and people it's like we've said before in a previous conversation, you just don't know till you know. And
Hmm.
when you start hearing about the cost and the time and the headache, what a gift of love that really is to a family member to be able to put these things into place, whether it's wills or trusts or, insurance and things like that. So that really is helping your clients enjoy life now while
Absolutely.
also putting things into place for their family to enjoy later. And it doesn't mean that you're locking up all your money and you have to live on beans and rice now, right?
No, absolutely not. No. And so when I set up my first trust, my children were younger, and it was cumbersome and it was a pain, and I didn't want to do it ever again because it was complicated. But at least with my company that I work with, partner with this fantastic group of lawyers, and it's all done electronically, right? And so you can make changes yearly, right? You buy a new house, you buy a new car, you like this nephew, you don't like that niece. It's all editable and online and so much simpler than it had been in years past. And so I love that piece. So yeah, it really helps with that confidence in living peace that you had mentioned.
Yeah. I think so many times people hear these terms like, probate and trust and wills and life insurance and annuities and legacy planning and there's a lot of confusion, but also misconceptions. What are some of those misconceptions people have about some of those things?
I have enough time or I don't need to do it. Big one.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just no guarantee of that. And we all
Yeah.
know
Oh, I
that.
won't need that. That won't impact me. That won't impact me. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, but it does. Eventually,
yeah.
there's only one guarantee for sure in life, and that's someday you will not be here, right? And so
Yeah.
it needs to be sorted. So that's a piece. And then just not knowing. It's like, who do I trust to, or how much is it going to cost? And that not knowing. And so that's where I like to help guide families as well. So I know we've talked about retirement planning and not having those worries. And this is just a part of that retirement planning, right? Is what do you wish and desire? And what is that legacy when you go on? And
Yeah.
so another thing that I've helped when I've been talking about legacy, and I met with met with the family this weekend, and was at a wedding, and so there's lots of children running around and just so much joy, and was able to speak with a family member who I haven't seen for a while, who have a couple of young kiddos, and talking about that legacy and what are they doing to preserve it, and started talking to them about their children and a product that they had never heard of, and I'd never heard of it until I started this career path called an IUL, an Indexed Universal Life Policy, and talked about how you can invest money into this account, have it grow tax free, how this money can pay for college or a car or a down payment when the kiddo's 20, stop paying for the account perhaps at that age. And because of compound interest, it will continue to grow. So by the
Mm,
time the kiddo is 67, they have lots of money in their retirement as well.
mm,
So Dad had no idea. He's what is this? I've got a
yeah.
529 plan, right? That's good for my kiddos. And I said, I like
Yep.
529s. They're awesome. However, it will be counted as one of your assets when you're filling out your financial aid for your kiddos, whereas the life insurance policy won't. Or if your kiddo decides not to go to school, that 529 is not the great option where the IUL is. And we looked at the
Mhm.
tax implications and went through several of the benefits of this possible program, in addition to if your child gets sick anytime from now until year 100, they're covered for chronic illness, critical illness, terminal illness, and have access to those funds as well. And so
Hmm.
a wedding isn't necessarily the time most people would talk about legacy planning, but it just seemed to come up with this family member and I, and um, how that can be such a great tool for protecting your children or your grandchildren and the next generation as well.
It really is, and it's something that so many times people don't understand options
Hmm.
that are available to them, right?
Yeah.
Like I've never heard of that before, and I didn't know that I could pay for college or buy a car in a plan or a financial tool that had something like that. That's pretty amazing, and I think
Yeah,
that is something that too many times people just go, "Oh, I've never heard of it, so must be too good to be true." But in reality, that type of product has been around for over 100 years, right?
correct. Yeah. It's one of those best kept secrets, right? That
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a secret. I want everyone to know about it because it's absolutely amazing and life changing. And so I talked about the use for a young one, right? But it can be for anyone who has the ability to let that money compound for at least 15 years, can really be a benefit. So
Yep.
great advantages for lots of people.
Yeah, pretty huge. So let's talk about this. I know you do a lot of work with women. How can women
Mhm.
use these kinds of financial tools to refocus their focus on not just creating wealth, but integrating that with the values and the purpose and really getting some of these outcomes that you're talking about? Because I think a lot of times people think it's either or. Either I need to have a nice values and love and purpose or create wealth, but you say you can do both.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how can I love myself, right? Put on my oxygen mask first, as they tell us in the
Yep.
airline, and make sure that my kiddos are protected. And so, yes, that IUL would be a great example of that lifelong income for yourself. And then if you structure it right in your trust, as I previously mentioned, how that money can then be passed on to future generations as well. And so it's nice for your family, or it can be that cause that really matters, right? And so have worked with folks who are stressed out about how do I pay for day-to-day bills? I don't know if I have enough. Maybe tapping into that 401k every month, but restructuring some of that money to have that guaranteed income, whether that's the IUL, whether that's the pension, whether that's an annuity product, to have those guaranteed certainties, and then frees up so much money for the gift of living. So I'll give an example of another woman who I worked with who was struggling making ends meet day to day and had all that money in the 401k and up and down and up and down and pulling money out. We were able to take about half of what she had saved in that stock market, and we put it in one of those IUL products, one of those fixed indexed annuities, where she would have no losses and was able to have guaranteed monthly returns. And I think she had around $100,000 a year is what we put into that plan. And she had then had a choice with that. Did she need the $700 a month income that would be coming from that? Or did she want to take that once a year and be able to do a special trip with her family? And so she didn't have that income gap, right, between her bills and her expenses. So she chose, instead of having that stock market 401k that was going up and down, to have it in the stable market. And then once a year, she plans a trip with her kids. And so it's this beautiful legacy of taking care of herself. So it's stable, no stress, and every year being able to take care of her family as well with a 1 or 2 week trip with that money that this account is generating.
Yes. Huge. And that's going to be different for everybody. And everybody
Absolutely.
is going to apply, their goals and dreams differently, but that's a wonderful way to look at that. And that actually is something where you can kind of almost like, feel the emotion that is creating for them. And probably when she sits down and looks at that plan and going, okay, this is locked in. And I don't need to worry about the volatility of the market. And this is a guaranteed and a stream of income, and it's going to accomplish these goals. And better than that, it's not just all about me with having a gazillion dollars sitting in a retirement account. It is me doing things for my family and with my family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and having those lasting memories, right? So I'm
Yep.
remembering taking these yearly trips with grandma and the family.
Yeah.
And so sometimes our legacy isn't necessarily just the dollars we leave behind, but those memories that we create with our loved ones, right? And so what's more precious and pure than remembering that special time you spent with
Hmm.
your cherished
Yeah.
loved one?
Huge. Yeah,
It
100%.
is. Absolutely.
So I think we've even used the words confident so many times, but that confident legacy, being able to know what you want down the road, but also being able to come into it knowing that it's planned out. Do you also, with your clients, once you put this plan into place, like to meet with them every year to kind of make sure everything is on track?
Absolutely. Yeah, life, so much happens in a year. It's amazing. A year, and my husband passed about 8 years now. I would have never envisioned my current life 8 years ago, right? Um, and so it's super important, whoever your trusted financial person is, that you're meeting once a year and updating and changing and making
Yep.
sure that you're not only on track for retirement, but what wishes have maybe changed or what
Yeah.
situations need to be updated.
That's and here's something, and I'm kind of projecting myself into that situation of, okay, we're going to meet together and maybe you recommended a certain change. That doesn't mean that, oh, well, the plan was wrong, now we need to change it. It just means that certain circumstances might have adjusted. Maybe inflation or tax rates have changed or your needs have changed. So that doesn't mean that there was a problem. It just means like, hey, let's just make a little slight pivot here and a little polish there.
Absolutely. All the time. Yeah, and sometimes the plan is absolutely beautiful,
Yep.
and sometimes it's not, right? And so something that's as we have more birthdays that I sometimes see is sometimes we have health issues. And a lot of us don't know that Social Security and Medicare isn't going to cover what we think it should as we have more birthdays and have more health issues. And so if we're not planning and prepared for that, it can really catch us off guard. And so we also like to not only look at the financial and the estate plan, the financial plan, but also what are you doing for your health insurance? And sometimes Medicare is great, or sometimes a medical advantage or a Medigap plan, so we can
Yep.
help with that as well. But also those long-term care plans, like how do I cover several $1,000s a month in a nursing home when Medicare stops covering after 20 days? And a
Wow.
lot of people
Yeah.
say, 20 days? You're kidding. I say, no, Medicare only covers
Yeah.
20 days. And then after that, you're responsible for a percentage. And after 100
Yep.
days, they don't pay at all. And
Yeah.
so knowledge is power in that regard, right? And knowing and being able to plan, how do I make that work in the event I break my hip or I have a stroke or something
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. Huge.
It
That's just
is.
amazing. And it's those things that we don't think about that, oh, like I jokingly said a little bit ago, like, oh, that won't happen to me. Well, that might be the case until it does. And sometimes those things like the nursing homes, though, that's not like $100, miscalculation. That can be massive. And statistically, there's a lot of people that need that. And, nobody needs a massive bill that you have to tap into your retirement savings to take care of. But if you know that that could be a possibility, for your retirement plan, to be impacted, plan for it. And if it happens, you have a plan. If it doesn't happen where you don't need it, then you don't need to expend that money. So I think those are the kind of things that there's no earthly way that the general public would just know to calculate all these things and how to perfectly plan for it. But when they can sit down with someone that can ask the right questions and guide in the right direction, you can make sure that all of those things are put into place properly.
Absolutely. And two things with that you mentioned that made me think most folks don't know that a nursing home may well be $10,000 a month, right? And so when you're saying it impacts your retirement, it decimates your retirement if you're not planning and prepared. And no, Medicare's not going to cover that. And even if you want Medicaid to help support that, you have to do what's called a spend down, right? So you have to spend all your assets so that you have less than $2,000 in your name before the state will pick up that bill. And so instead of giving your house and your 401k and all those retirement funds to your loved ones, they're going to the nursing facility, right? Nobody wants that. And so
Nope.
if we can be mindful and make a plan on how do we protect our money, our assets, and ultimately our loved ones, why wouldn't we do that? And so your first question about life insurance is love assurance.
Yeah.
Absolutely where that comes from.
Yeah. And knowing how to put some things into place just can kind of be the best peace of mind for you, and love and care that you provide for your legacy moving forward. So, Michelle, this has been super helpful. If someone is listening to this thinking, where do I start? What's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so I always encourage folks to come to my website, which is moore.com. And it's Moore, my last name, so Moore, familywealth.com. Can make an appointment with me directly on my calendar. Always free to talk, to consult, to share, to strategize on how to best protect you and your loved ones.
Excellent. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.